Meanwhile, the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, and other aid organizations have launched a fresh appeal for funds in order to help them handle the growing number of refugees coming out of South Sudan. The organizations warned that the situation could get worse in a few months should funding not come through. Here's Kofam Renje with that story.
Dozens of South Sudanese have fled into refugee camps in neighboring countries. About 400,000 of them at the moment, and many more are still fleeing the war-torn country every day. That number is expected to hit more than 700,000 by end of the year. It's a crisis.
The situation is serious already, very, very serious. I mean, we have almost twice as many refugees in 7 months of conflict that we had after 20 years of war, of civil war in South Sudan. Will it get worse? I think it will.
The needs are enormous. Food security and nutrition challenges are very severe, but so are the needs in terms of health, water, sanitation. People have been displaced in very large numbers inside the country.
The situation could get even worse. UNHCR needs about $700 million to handle the situation until end of the year. But they don't have the money. Only $116 million is at their disposal. That's just about 24% of what's needed.
More worrying is that the people that will come from now on, that will flee from now on until the rest of the year, will arrive in a poorer and poorer shape. Nutritionally wise, health wise, have been traveling longer distances. So actually the health status, nutrition status of the new arrivals in the camps will get worse.
There could be loss of life already. We want to avoid that, and we still can avoid that. If we have the resources, we're moving food by air, by land, by river. We're doing everything we can logistically to really address those needs.
WFP warns that it will be forced to cut food rations in camps across the region in order to cater for the growing number of refugees streaming in from South Sudan. There's also the fear of the spread of disease, including cholera. And with the onset of the rainy season, moving supplies could get even more complicated, as most areas will be impassable by road. At least 1.5 million South Sudanese are either in IDP camps or refugee camps in Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia and Sudan. Aid organizations say they need urgent help, and time is of essence before South Sudan hits the headlines again with stories of hunger, death and disease. Kofam Renje, CCTV, Nairobi, Kenya.
Quite a grim picture there. Let's expand this conversation further. We're joined live here in studio by Encontre, UNHCR's regional refugee coordinator, who's handling the agency's response to the South Sudan crisis. And thanks for joining us. So UNHCR needs about $700 million to push you at least till the end of the year. Yes. You've appealed, of course, for that funding, but you've only so far got about 24%. Why the lukewarm response?
It's difficult to speculate why the response has not been full funding. There are lots of crises in the world that are happening all at the same time, but the situation in South Sudan is dramatic. It's very dire, and we have no option but to try and help these people. The fighting is ongoing, the rains are upon us, and the people are desperate. Many of them have left their homes, seeking just the safety and to save their lives in the neighboring countries to South Sudan.
The situation is quite desperate, really. Just looking at the figures, UNHCR is saying that at present we have about 400,000 refugees. That number, though, is expected to rise in the next few months to about 715,000. So what can be done, given the poor response from people when you appeal for funds? What can be done to alleviate these people's suffering?
It's very difficult to make choices, but we need to help the people, and we can't say that shelter is more important than health or than food. So we're forced, it's UNHCR and 34 partners, and people are working every day of the year in field locations, deep field locations. When we talk of the 715,000 people, it could well be over 1 million people. UNFPA, the WFP, the food agency, they're predicting that as many as 4 million people don't have enough food to eat in South Sudan.
At present?
At present. And we may have a famine that will be declared soon, but it will be really dire if we have more babies dying.
Right. And then, of course, there was the problem of accessing these people who desperately need this this aid. And your organization, plus other aid organizations as well, were complaining that they just don't have that safe passage to these areas. Has the situation changed?
We're having more and more access to some of the locations, and we really have to acknowledge the neighboring countries, the governments of Kenya, of Uganda, Ethiopia, and Sudan, who have opened their doors and allowed these people to seek shelter and to seek safety with host communities and to help these people. So UNHCR and its partners are working all the time to help the refugees from South Sudan, and we would not like to see more deaths before we start having some more funds to help these people.
Right.
I'd just like to tell you, when you talk of 715,000 people, I can think of one lady who left with 5 children. She grabbed her children in the middle of the night and she ran away. She walked for 3 weeks to Ethiopia, to Gambela. When she arrived in Gambela, only one of her children was alive. The baby that she was breastfeeding.
Wow.
This is the sort of stories that we're seeing behind the numbers of thousands and thousands of people.
I mean, the stories are heartbreaking. Besides the appeal that UNHCR has made, what else is being done to at least minimize their suffering?
We're trying all we can, and we really appreciate journalists, persons like yourself, who give us the opportunity to enter into the living rooms of people who are watching and who can lend support and give assistance, financial and human resources assistance, to help us respond to the needs of these people in South Sudan. They fought for 23 years for a civil war, and during that time we had 450,000 registered refugees. Now we have passed that by 3 times, and we expected the numbers could go up if we don't get the financial assistance, particularly very soon.
And thanks very much for those
Thank you
insights.
very
Quite
much.
grim picture there
It's
of
very
South
sad.
Sudan. Yeah. Thanks. That's Encontre from the UNHCR here in studio with us tonight.